Hello and welcome. I'm Melinda Kimami. Tonight, Federal High Court orders permanent forfeiture of 7.6 billion naira allegedly linked to former Petroleum Minister Diezani Alison Madueke. Concerned Nigerian groups demand the repatriation of Mrs. Alison Madueke to defend corruption charges brought against her by the EFCC. President Muhammadu Buhari expresses satisfaction with the improvements recorded in the economy in the last couple of months. And flooding may get worse in the United States of Texas as waters continue to rise following heavy storms that have displaced more than 2,000 people.
On business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria injects $250 million into the forex market as total interventions hit $9 billion in months.
On sports news tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari congratulates the national female basketball team on their victory at the FIBA Women's Afro Basketball Tournament.
From Abuja, former Secretary to the Government of Anambra State, Oseloka Obaze, defeats Ifeanyi Uba, others, to clinch PDP's ticket ahead of the state's governorship election in November.
We begin tonight with legal matters. There appears to be more trouble for the former Petroleum Minister, Mrs. Diezani Alison Madueke, as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, today succeeded in securing a final forfeiture order from the Federal High Court regarding the 7.6 billion naira she allegedly kept in a commercial bank. The order, granted by Justice Chuka Obiozo, followed an ex parte application filed by the EFCC. Our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shoyele, has this report.
About 3 weeks ago, the EFCC approached vacation judge Justice Chuka Obiozo via an ex parte application. The commission asked the judge to order the interim forfeiture of a sum of 7.6 billion naira linked to former Petroleum Minister Mrs. Diezani Alison Madueke. Counsel to the EFCC, Rotimi Oyedepo, argued that the money was part of a larger sum of $153.3 million allegedly siphoned from the coffers of the NNPC sometime in 2014. Mrs. Alison Madueke allegedly stashed the money in 3 banks, and in February last year, the federal government, through an order granted by another judge of the Federal High Court, had recovered part of the money from the banks. The 7.6 billion is said to be the outstanding on the total sum. On the 9th of August, Justice Obiozo granted the interim order and directed the EFCC to publish same in a national newspaper so that anyone with interest in the funds could appear before the court to show cause why the funds should not be permanently forfeited to the federal government. At the resumed proceedings, counsel to the EFCC told presiding Justice Abdulaziz Anka that the commission had complied with the court's order and no one had come forward to lay claims to the money. He urged the courts to make an order of final forfeiture.
This is a good step in the right direction, and it's been helping us. I just pray that every other agencies will also take clue from what the commission is doing. If the asset could be stripped from any suspect that is accused of combating money that belongs to all of us should join hands together to ensure that we succeed in getting assets and funds that are proceed of unlawful activity back to the government.
After listening to the submissions of the EFCC Council, Justice Anka granted the order as prayed. He also held that all parties have a right of appeal. From the Federal High Court, Lagos, Shola Shoyele, Channels Television News.
The former Petroleum Minister's woes are far from over as the concerned Nigerians group hit the streets of Abuja to demand that the federal government repatriate Mrs. Alison Madueke The group, led by popular entertainer Charlie Boy, went to the EFCC headquarters to ask that she be brought back to face corruption charges. This is the same group which occupied the city centre for about 10 days, demanding that President Buhari returns or resigns while he was on medical vacation in London.
Just by the entrance to the headquarters of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in Abuja, a group of protesters led by Nigeria's entertainer Charlie Boy staged a protest calling for the extradition of Mrs. Diezani Madueke.
Do you know Diezani must come back and face a trial? I know Diezani must come back and face a trial. Do you know Diezani must come back and face a trial? I know Diezani must come back and face a trial.
They are the same group of protesters who for 2 weeks protested at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, calling for the resumption or resignation of President Muhammadu Buhari while he was in the United Kingdom for medical treatment.
No going back, oh, no going back. If you see Buhari, oh, tell him, say, he's too much, I know, no going back.
With the objectives of that campaign achieved, the group's attention is now on another high-profile politician, a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Diezani Madueke, who is alleged to have stolen billions of naira.
2 years is too long a time. For 2 years we've been saying Diezani is corrupt, Diezani stole so much money. Why is she not on trial?
Diezani Madueke left the shores of Nigeria after her political party lost power at the central government in 2015. Since then, there have been several allegations of fraud leveled against the former Minister of Petroleum and trials instituted in her absence. On August 8, 2017, a federal high court in Lagos granted an interim forfeiture of 7.6 billion naira belonging to the former minister. It does appear, however, that the protesters want more from the government, even though the EFCC claims it is following due process.
This is not just about Diezani, this is about the fight, like you rightly said, the fight about corruption. We now want to give it a new lease of life. We're looking into this matter and we're asking the federal government to do the needful.
We are not relating our effort. Right now, all of you are aware how much we recover from Diezani. They are already, both the properties, Swiss properties, monies that have been recovered. But I beg for your patience, let's be patient, let's follow the due process.
For 2 years, the Buhari-led government has been prosecuting some high-profile politicians, but none has been convicted. Many, including this group of protesters, would love to see more of such politicians prosecuted and convicted.
Diezani must come back and face a trial. Oh, do you know Diezani must come back?
President Muhammadu Buhari today says he is pleased with the improvements in the Nigerian economy. His comment follows a meeting with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, and Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, for about 2 hours. They updated him on the economy, implementation of the 2017 budget, and preparations for the 2018 budget. Other issues discussed are revenue strategies, combined cost reduction, and debt management, monetary policy strategies, and their economic impact. President Buhari reminded the ministers and the CBN governor that reviving the economy remains his major priority. Nigeria's headline food inflation for July comes in today at 20.88% on a year-on-year basis, the highest on record since the new series of data computing in 2009, and that's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. A separate report released today by the NBS shows the average price of several agric and non-agric food products, from yams to beans, tomatoes, bread, and has an onward trend. In this report, our channel's business editor, Bosin Omofaye, takes a look at some of the factors behind the steady increase.
The latest headline food inflation comes at no surprise to many Nigerians. For a country of 180 million and a young people component nearly 80%, Africa's most populous nation surely has plenty of hungry mouths to feed. But what worries the man on the street was how a country with vast arable land, a temperate weather, and a tradition of agriculture suffers from inadequate food supply and a steady increase in the prices of basic and staple food products.
It affects your buying power. What it means also is that you are not able to pick very important items that you should have. So the items you have in your list will generally reduce.
For the economists and analysts, the answers to Nigeria's stubborn high food prices lie partly in poor infrastructure and the wave of insecurity in areas such as the northeast and the Lake Chad region.
Fulani herdsmen are being pursued by the same climate change factors, because they're being pursued because the arid area is fast depleting.
But as far as market prices and the dinner table are concerned, many Nigerians believe the authorities are barely scratching the surface.
We are not finding it funny. It's not like this before. It's not like this. It's the economy. I would like say it's the government of today. It's government, It's government, They should do something.
Like other previous administrations, the Buhari's government has a big task of providing adequate food products and at prices that are tasty to Nigerians. Bosun Omofaye, Channels Television News.
To discuss more on this issue, we're being joined on the news at 10 by the CEO of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Iwane. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Melinda.
Now, inflation down, but the pain continues. I saw that in your report.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, because inflation measures the change in prices, not the actual prices. So what we've seen is that headline inflation between last year and this year has gone up by 16%. In other words, if you had a loaf of bread at 100 naira last year, it now costs you 116. And so it's, when you decompose this, you have four components of inflation. One, headline inflation, which has gone up by only 16%. It was as high as 17% or 18% earlier. Core inflation is down to 12.2%, and month-on-month inflation is down to 1.21%. So what does this mean to the ordinary man? Now, what has happened, according to what Bosin was just talking about, was that food inflation, according to this data release, showed the following items, all higher: meat, bread and cereals, fish, oil and fat, vegetables, potatoes, yam, and tubers. In all, that basket went up by 20.28%. In other words, if you bought food at this time last year, if it cost you 1,000 naira, you would have spent 1,200 naira this year to buy the same amount of food. But now let's go to the ordinary basket, which is what concerns you and I. In this basket, which is the FDC typical food basket, we have in all 9 items. Of these 9 items, 4 declined between July, when the measures, and now. The one that has gone up, only one of them went up, the others stayed flat. Palm oil has gone up from 12,500 to 15,000. Semolina stayed flat at 3,200 a pack each. But old yam, which was as high as 1,800, has come down to 1,300 because of the harvest season. You have new yam now. Tomatoes, which was as high as 28,000, was 24,000 last month, and it's now down to 12,000 for a 50 kg bag. Gari was as high as 16,000, actually went up to 30,000, and now it's down to 10,000. Rice, thanks to Lake Rice and other things, which Lagos State and others, rice at the beginning of the year was 22,000. It's now down to 16,500 and likely to go lower. Flour, which you used to make bread, has stayed flat at 10,500 because wheat prices have gone up. So all the other things like sugar, flour, beans have stayed stubbornly at about 19,000. That's the effect.
That's why I wonder, why are they so resistant, these food prices?
Well, the food basket has 2 components. There's the imported basket and the non-imported basket, which is the normal food basket. The non-imported basket is seasonal. So during the harvest season, you find those prices come down. During the planting season, they go up. And then in July, there was an aberrational issue. In July 8th, we had a big flood. The rain across Lagos and all over the country. That disrupted logistics. So a lot of food was stuck in the points of planting and didn't get to the markets. In Lagos, for example, Lekki and all, remember that July. So that you cannot use July as a typical measure. It was aberrational. And you have to come back to ask yourself, what are these fundamental causes of inflation here? Is inflation because we are demanding too much, in which case you need interest rates to stop people from demanding, or is it because we are producing too little? The answer is that you consider the report, we are producing too little. We need to increase the amount we are producing, and that's important. Now the question comes as to, should Nigeria be celebrating? There was a report that we're doing very well. I think that is too early. Compared to when the president left, prices have come down marginally. It was as high as 17.5, it's now down to 16.05. But let us look at 4 other countries. Nigeria is 16.05, Angola is 27.29, but Angola came all the way down from 40% to 27%. But look at the other countries. Ghana is at 11.9, Kenya is 7.47, South Africa is 4.6. So if I was marking a school certificate paper for Nigeria on inflation, Nigeria had a grade 3, while Ghana and others had grade 1.
Definitely, Nigeria still has a lot
of work to be done.
Thank you so much, the CEO of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rwani. In part 2, after the break, Lagos State Government begins demolition of distressed buildings in the state, starting from the island. Stay with us.